walk to the middle of the avenue of eternal peace.
Well, all right. Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Well, today we're going to talk about livestock. So, I don't know. Imagine a world where you could eat off the stuff off your farm. That's pretty freaking cool. And it turns out I'm a big meat eater, which means I need to be growing some meat. So, let's talk livestock. And there's a lot of cool options out there and things that preppers can do and to basically keep your diet going and make things sustainable. We're going to get into how to feed them, how to take care of them. I don't mean like every step. I mean, like what kinds of cool things can you be growing and to take care of it? Obviously there's a lot of detail to get into each one. But I think you're going to have a good picture and hopefully be able to make the decisions of what animals might be right for you. Now, I have some core ones in mind that I don't even have all these animals, but I also don't provide 100% of my meat, which is a problem. So, we're going to cover what I think are the right choices and definitely some of the what I know are the right choices. And so here we go. Let's jump into it. Kevin, the perfect like homesteader entry level animal, aside of maybe a dog. I mean, I think family dog is easy to get into, and I think that's important. And I think a dog is actually very useful on the homestead.
Yeah, especially well-trained dog.
Yes, absolutely. But the gateway animal?
Chickens, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we all talk about chickens. Everybody loves chicken. I mean, everybody likes chicken eggs. Everybody likes eating chicken. But, they can be a little bit difficult to deal with unless you're prepared.
Rotisserie, whatever you got. Chickens are go-to. All right.
So, I mean, one of the big things we're gonna talk about for all kinds of fowl is building a good coop. Wherever you live in the United States or overseas, you've got predators, things that want to kill those animals and eat them. Where I'm at, I've got a fox. He's not too much of a problem, but I've got a bunch of hawks and eagles that'll come and swoop up my ducks and just mangling them.
Yeah.
So, with a coop, it's important that it has it doesn't have any easy access where something can climb up through there. Fisher cats will get into something and that'll kill all your chickens.
Yeah.
Just to eat one, just for the sport of it.
Yeah.
So you really want to have something that's, up off the ground a little bit. Something that you can seal up the doors and the windows, if you have windows in it.
Yeah.
And you don't want it, when I like to put a little bit of that 1/4-inch welded wire down on the floor underneath
that's heavier than chicken wire. I mean, that really is a big difference to keep the animals out.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big things I read in all the books when I was first early on, and this has never been a problem for me, but they made a big deal about an animal can reach in and kind of kill your chicken and eat it like piece by piece through the fence.
Right.
That has never been an issue for me. I've never seen that happen, but I've definitely seen a bunch of stories and I've seen it from other where they literally pull the parts through the fencing. So you want to, and they're talking about raccoons. Kevin said the Fisher cats will do that. Some, little ugly rodents of any kind will kind of go after you like that. So
yeah. So chickens are great. They're they produce in the right circumstances an egg a day. If you have six chickens, that's a half a dozen eggs every day. I know a lot of people that got into chickens and every time I go by their house, they're like, please take eggs. I have a bowl of 40 eggs here. What am I going to do with them all?
Right. So that's, they say that the average chicken lays between 250 to 300 eggs a year.
Mhm.
And my experience, and I think I've read it somewhere, but it's definitely what's happened for me, is you seem to get about 3 solid years of laying out of a chicken.
Mhm.
And I'm saying, like, really productive, like, they'll keep laying for probably 6, 7 years, I think,
Right.
but not getting that steady, like Kevin said, 1 a day kinda thing. Um, they don't lay eggs in the wintertime, but it's a sunlight issue, so you can recreate that by extending daylight hours. I like to let the sunset bring the chickens back into the coop, so therefore usually when I add light, I add it to, like, early. Like, I make it a morning light. So if the sun is coming up in the winter at, say, 7:30 or something like that, then what I do is I have that timer where it comes on at 6 or 5 o'clock in the morning, because obviously you're getting an earlier sunset also in the winter. But I'll have it come on at, like, 4 or 5 in the morning, and then that'll keep them laying. Um,
Yeah. I kinda did the opposite just because of a solar light I have set up out there.
I mean, it's
So the
so
light,
nice, right?
yeah, goes down and the light kicks on, and they're in the coop, but it's got, an extra 3 or 4 hours of, light in there.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. And it kinda it does make a difference. Now, giving them the break in the wintertime is maybe a little bit healthier for the chicken, so you have to decide what's right for your needs. It turns out, you know, but you're basically gonna get the same amount of eggs, whether you get it in that faster, shorter period or you give them the break and then they lay for 5 years instead of 3. I
Right.
mean, that's the takeaway on that. But there's lots of good recipes for cooking chicken. You can eat the wings and fry and
Mhm.
grill, and eggs are awesome, to be honest. I mean, they're just like the go-to. They help you with baking, they help you with everything,
Yeah, great
and
for protein.
they're easy.
Yep.
I've never taken a chicken to a vet or done anything like that in 10 years of raising chickens. Um, they do get mites sometimes, giving them the ability to do, like, a dust bath, and they have stuff like diatomaceous earth you might, mix in to, help them get rid of things that are irritating them. Sometimes their butts will clog up, fun things, they mention chicken butts
Mhm.
and things.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the
Horrible.
worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the worst thing to have to deal with.
Well, that's the worst, or, like, basically, I always they say do, like, a bucket of warm water, and you just kinda are, like, dunking them in. You can clean their butts out and
Uh-huh.
fix things. Usually, that's coming from worms or parasites, and you can
Mhm.
get into something like that. Usually, once that starts to happen, it ends bad, but hopefully, chickens are one of those you have redundancy. You've probably heard on a farm, people say, if you have livestock, you have dead stock.
Right.
It kinda that's how it goes. I know my wife's had, like, and then you always have the debate about free range or not free range. When I was losing, like, I think I got away the first 2 years, we never really lost anything to predators. We were just great. And I'd just let them out of the coop in the morning and lock the door at night, and that was it. Then one day, like Mother's Day, I think it was, we go out for ice cream and we come home and there's 20 dead chickens in the yard. Like, I
Oh.
think we had about 30, but we lost 20. And they weren't even, it was like a mom fox teaching the babies how to kill, I guess is
Yeah.
what the consensus of the neighborhood was. And it just, like, broke heads and they were all over the yard. It was bad. Now the predators seem to be birds where I am. Like, I have foxes. I was having trouble for a while. We got rid of the fox, and then you can just tell them to go away. The fox. I don't know. And
Yeah.
then there might be other tricks. You have to look on the internet for that. But then we ended up getting birds as predators, and we have, like, I don't know, all kinds of birds of prey that seem to come down and mess with them. But we had owls, and the owls would put them up in a tree. They'd, like, take the chicken's head off and then leave them in the tree. And my wife was, like, walking through the yard, and one literally fell out of the tree and hit her. And, a headless chicken,
Headless chicken.
that doesn't do well for keeping everyone happy on the homestead. Just
Yeah.
say something to think about.
Yeah. Now I've got ducks as I mentioned. They're similar to chickens, almost,
They are.
almost the same thing. They you don't technically you don't need water for your ducks, but you're kind of an asshole if you
Yeah.
don't have something, I got a kiddie pool out in the yard that they can go swimming in, and I've dug a big pond for them, in their little enclosure.
Yeah, I would
Um,
definitely plan some kind of tank. And that's the thing. It could be like, 50 or 60 gallon tank and you're better than nothing.
right.
But, you know, you got a
Yeah.
pond. My fear, you have ducks, so you can tell me. My fear is they're very messy,
Oh
like
yeah.
worse than chickens.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. They're completely disgusting. And
Mhm.
any clean water, like a pool or a pond, anything that you have for them, they're gonna turn it into mud.
Yeah.
They just
You
they
have to set
just
up
are
a drain for
nasty
that
about it.
pond unless it's
Yeah.
huge. So
Exactly. Exactly. They're just disgusting animals in general. Um, the duck eggs are similar to chicken eggs. They're a little bit larger. Um, they're they're good, and honestly, I'm a big fan of eating duck.
and some people
So
are allergic to one and not the other and vice versa, right? So
yeah.
you can maybe find something that works there for your family.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I prefer duck meat over chicken meat, but I prefer chicken eggs over duck eggs. I know people who have ducks, a lot of them will just use the duck eggs for baking and not so much the other.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You said no problem. They taste great and you're happy. That's your
Yeah. I mean,
experience.
and they are great for baking. I
Mhm,
think they're better than chicken eggs even. But
mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're a great alternative to chickens, especially if you have some water on your property that they can access.
Yeah. And then those of you who've been listening to the show for a while, my thing is rabbits, right? I like rabbits because I like meat, and rabbits are quick, repeatable meat, and they're kicking ass with that. You guys know I have a bunch. Here's like my setup early on. Now I have more cages and more full, and I basically have twice this setup that you see
Okay.
in the picture, which is I have basically 8 separate cages, which I really keep one per cage. But if like it's a mom that has babies, then they'll all stay in there until the babies are ready to go out and that kind of thing. Basically, you want to get them out before they start humping mom. You know how that
Hmm.
is.
Yeah.
Um, I do New Zealand rabbits. I think they're the right choice, but I haven't experimented with a lot of others. I did a bunch of reading, and that's what I came up with as the go-to choice, and then I went with it. I read 4 to 6 pounds of meat per rabbit. Yeah, they're usually like 5 pounds, but that's because I'm lazy to go get them.
Hmm.
They're basically 8 to 12 weeks old. They're kind of the perfect. You want to butcher them.
Okay.
I always wait a little bit longer because I never get around to it, and it's never a fun day on butcher day.
Yeah.
It's my experience.
Hmm.
Um, Rabbits can be small, like 4 square feet per rabbit, that kind of thing. I had a covered area, like in my barn, had like dog kennels, and so I throw them in there. They already had a roof, which has made it easy. Um, I think I did a video, or maybe I need to do a video about rabbit cages. I know there's a lady who I really like. I'll try and get it into the show notes, who does a video on building cages, which is what I modeled mine off of.
Hmm.
And I will put that in the show notes so you guys have it and can check it out. Um, Rabbits are like, I don't know, $30 or something, 25 when I buy them locally, but then they're super easy. I'm always trying to find new ones to add variety to the DNA, to
Right.
keep them from all being too inbred. I don't know how much people worry about that. I don't even know if that's really a big thing. I know they talk about when animals are inbred too much, they end up with more prone to disease and illness and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So that's something to be aware of. Um, they do cost a bit to feed. 10 to 15 a month would be like a small. I I would say, I don't know, I probably spend more than that. I probably once a month I spend probably $40 on feed for my rabbits, but feeding about 8 of them.
Hmm.
So that's, you do your thing. They say 6 to 12 every 30 days. I would say every 45 days in my experience is more like 3 to 6 per rabbit.
Hmm.
Again, you do you. Uh,
Yeah, and you can save a lot of money on feed for most of these animals by you know, by allowing free range stuff.
100%,
Rabbits can be a little bit trickier.
because they
Chickens
dig.
will come back
They'll
when
dig
you.
out, right? The
Yeah,
rabbits
exactly.
will tunnel out if you leave them too long in a, crazy place. They like to dig holes. But hey, there are definitely books on feeding your rabbits for free. You can also grow, like, they have that fodder, like little, looks like, I don't know. I think it's barley is, I think, what we were growing, like
Hmm.
little, and the seeds. It was tough to get it going without mold and stuff. But I bought like a setup for like $40, so like little seed trays in a tower. And I don't know.
Hmm.
I put the wife in charge of it. It worked for a month or two. And then she was like, eh. And I got to say, once I bought a feeding your meat rabbits book, from nature or something. There are a million plants, dock, and different things. I have sweet gum trees. I just break off a branch and drop it in. I am sure that I could feed them just off my land and be, more headache free than I am. But I buy like Timothy grass and that kind of stuff, and I'm feeding them hay and all that. So who knows? There are definitely ways to do it cheaper and more efficient than I do. But you figure if you can turn them over in 8 to 12 weeks and the smaller babies are eating less than, the bigger ones. So it's not that bad. Uh, what else? You have,
Yeah, well, we're talking about rabbits. I want to talk about guinea pigs real quick. A lot of
okay,
people, not really common in the United States.
not
In
what I would
Peru,
think of.
yeah, in Peru, they've been doing it for centuries, and in the Andes, South America. I had a friend of mine that said when he was a kid he raised guinea pigs, and for meat. And he said his sister brought a cat home one day, and he came in the next day, and all the guinea pigs were dead. That
Oh,
cat killed all of them. So he put it in a pillowcase and threw it off a bridge.
the cat.
The cat clawed its way back out and came back the next day.
Sure.
So he I don't know. He got it. He didn't mess up the pillowcase situation the second time around, I guess. But he
Oh,
was telling
oh,
me he was
Kevin.
so mad about this cat eating all his. I mean, it killed. It was basically the family's food for the month was all gone.
Wow.
Um,
That's kind of significant. Yeah.
yeah, never eaten guinea pig. Couldn't tell you what it tastes like, but they say it's similar to rabbit.
Yeah. As far as like maintenance and care for those, the big thing is, like, I go out and I have to sweep up everything, their rabbit droppings. Now, obviously, people get very excited. That's how I sold the wife on it, was the compost of, they rabbit poo you can put in the garden right away, right? And
Yeah.
that's huge. Chickens, you can use that poo and stuff, but you got to age it a little bit and, work it in over time. Whereas the rabbit stuff is ready to dump in right away. And I know
Hmm.
the wife, it's done big things for turning around our soil. So she's very happy with that. We're always bringing it in. Plus, supposedly, rabbit poo deters other rabbits. Like,
Oh,
they
really?
don't like the smell of the other guy's thing.
Hmm.
I don't really know. But you'd think they'd just be coming around to hump whoever's there. I don't
Yeah.
really
I mean,
understand
wild
that stuff.
rabbits will destroy your garden if
Yeah.
if you got a bunch of
And they're
random
fun to
stuff
eat
fenced in.
too. So yeah,
Hmm.
but it turns out you're not getting 4 or 5 pounds out of a wild rabbit, though, and you
Yeah.
are out
Right.
of these. Like, mine don't look that much, but they look a lot meatier. They're not taller, they're just a lot more meat than other, things. So, something to keep in mind. Rabbits are pretty easy, and you can raise them as, like, a colony thing. I've seen really cool stuff, but I can tell you that the males are relentless and the females are not really happy about it when they're being humped every 20 minutes or every 5 minutes.
Yeah, and
No.
I think that goes with a lot of livestock. You want to limit the amount of males you have in the population.
Yeah.
Chickens and ducks will be, if you have five roosters and five hens, it's not gonna be great.
Yeah, no, if you get a female that isn't really into it, dude, they bite the testicles off the male.
Oof.
They don't fuck around. They're, hey, they're like, nope, we're not doing this shit. We'll straighten your ass out. It's one of those takes care of itself problems,
Mhm.
but that's something to keep in mind. Now, other meat, sticking to the meat thing, what about goats or goats and sheep?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of goats. I lived on a farm that had I guess it was a herd of about 30 goats. And I lived on the other side of the farm, but every day they'd do a loop and they'd just come around, come through, check everything out. They eat all the poison ivy. It's great. A friend of mine says that drinking goat's milk will make you immune to poison ivy.
Heard it. Now,
I
I may
don't
have
know
heard
if
it
that's
from
true
your
or
friend.
not.
I don't know. But yeah, it can hurt, right? Because you're exposed to little bits, right? So
Mhm.
that in theory is how these things work, right? I
Right.
guess.
So
Yeah, they
yeah,
eat off the
goats.
land, which is
Mhm.
awesome. And usually they're saying 40 to 60 pounds of meat out of a goat. So
Right.
that's not too
Right.
bad.
They say you can support about 8 goats per acre. That's obviously you're going to be supplementing a little bit with any kind of livestock. Nothing can free range entirely and be healthy, but um, that's one of the benefits of goats, and they produce a gallon of milk a day. A milking goat will, so
That's
it's
the thing.
quite a bit.
Right. You get the milk, or sorry, you get the meat and the dairy. You're making cheese, you're making soap, you're making, milk that you're drinking. There's all kinds of benefits to a goat. And sheep, same thing. People milk sheep. It's kind of weird to me. It
Yeah, they
doesn't
say they
like
said it's a little bit more difficult than goats. I've never seen somebody milk a sheep.
not
That's
my world, but
yeah.
that's why goats went out over sheep in my mind. But you guys can put in the comments about how I'm dumb and I'm missing
Yeah.
a big dance,
Unless you're Welsh,
the big
then
thing.
it's sheep is the thing, right?
Sheep is the thing. And
Yeah.
then obviously we can talk about the, hides, the whatever, fur, wool.
Mhm.
Wool is
Wool.
probably the right word.
Wool is what you do, yeah. No, goats
Uh,
are great. They're very smart. They're about as smart as a dog. So it's one of the things that you have to keep in mind when you're dealing with goats is they're gonna figure out how to escape.
Yes.
They're gonna figure out how to get out of a
And they
pen that you're
climb
in.
everything, right?
Mhm.
So that's the thing. You need quality fencing, but you need a great fence, but you need a limited shelter. Like
Mhm.
you don't need to get too crazy work as far as like compared to other animals, chickens, that kind of thing. So, that's definitely something to, keep in mind.
Mhm.
I don't know. I like goats. I think there's something we're going to probably bring to the farm. We're actually, I think the next step right now, I just have dogs, rabbits, chickens. We've done turkeys. Turkeys, I found were very messy, probably along your duck theory.
Yeah. Yeah, and
They
they're
just,
really aggressive.
they just were. I mean, my wife got along with, the turkeys. We did 4 last year. I still have 3 in the freezer. Because what do you do with a turkey? You eat it at Thanksgiving. And then you're like,
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
turkey really doesn't taste that great. It's another one of those meats that you're like, "I guess we have to have it for Thanksgiving," and that's the
that's it.
only time you eat it.
I gotta
Uh,
pull one out and, put it in there, and even if I just make a bunch of, like, lunch meat or something,
they,
but
the neighbor, up the street, their daughter would paint the toenails of the turkeys. So I
that's a
don't
treat. Yep,
I don't know. I
and
don't
I
know
didn't
what
have
that's
these,
about,
like,
but
beautiful, majestic turkeys like people get, mine were, like, your standard white, like
mhm,
farm breed, whatever you call meat turkey. And yeah, we had got them at the local like hardware store. And I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And you buy the little chicks and whatever. And they just, I guess my wife had read about disease can spread between chickens and turkeys. Anybody I've ever seen do turkeys had them mixed together. She said absolutely it's a no-go. But we put them together and or no, sorry, we kept them separate. And because of that, they were in their own fenced area and it got dirty and smelly fast. And there
yeah,
were some smelly birds and it was a lot of work. And we were like, no, we're not doing that again. It's
mhm,
easier to spend the $50 and buy a good fresh turkey. Or if you don't really care where your meat comes from, they're like 29 cents a pound or something at Thanksgiving. So you can
mhm.
do what you want.
Just throw it
You
in
know?
the freezer for a few
Yeah,
months.
there you go.
Yeah. Now, one of the things with getting back to sheep, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, we do mostly cattle in the United States, and the reason is that during the 1870s to 1920s, there was something called the Sheep Wars, the Great Sheep
Okay.
Wars. So people were grazing sheep on public land, and the sheep would just overeat everything. They'd rip plants up and eat the roots and everything. So it would be, almost a year before the land was usable and to graze on. Cows won't do that. They'll just move on to a different section and things will grow back right away. So there's a lot of a lot of shootouts and a lot of murders over people grazing sheep on public land and cattle ranchers not being a fan of it. So if you're interested in weird history stuff, that's look into that one. There's a few videos and books on that.
Okay.
Now, talking about cows, though.
Okay. Well, cows. All right. Yeah.
Cows, it's big. It's a big one. You need a lot more land for cows than any of these other animals we're
They're
talking
not
about.
on my go-to like easy farmer list.
No.
I love eating cow. I had a buddy who raised cows. I would buy half a cow every year and put it in my freezer. I love it, but you need some land, and
Yeah,
you
it's not
need
something simple
meat.
to add to the small, homestead.
Right. You can do it on your 2-acre, 3-acre farm, but you're bringing in some hay. You're not feeding them off your farm.
Right. You need, maybe 100 acres for if you're going to actually raise cows for meat. Milking cows, a little bit different, but you still need a lot of land, or you're going to be buying a lot of feed. Milk cows produce a lot of milk. One cow is going to, take care of your whole neighborhood. Really, I think it's almost 8 gallons a day for some of these milk cows. They produce a lot.
I mean, that's it.
So,
You get a benefit, and the meat's awesome, but yeah.
yeah,
And
it's a lot of work.
most people are bringing in the butchering thing, or sorry, the impregnating thing, the bowl, all that. That's like a whole ordeal that you're doing separate. Very few people are like naturally working all that out on their farm. As far as your cows, that's not like a normal thing to, just put your bowl together and whatever. You got to kind of know what you're doing. And so
Yeah.
that's a little scarier. I'm just saying it's more than I'm willing to take on, but I love the idea.
Your full-time job. If you're raising cattle, that's what you're doing. That's your whole thing.
And, and horses kind of the same thing as far as the feed situation. Obviously they have benefit. They're usable. I don't know that really anybody's using horses for work much anymore. That work that's different than a four-wheeler is, I guess, what I'm getting at. So, people get around with them, but people aren't really plowing with horses and stuff, all that I see. I don't know. I've never seen anybody out plowing with the horses and that kind of stuff anymore, or your oxen, right?
Right.
Who knows? But hey, you do you, right? Maybe. So horses to me are just an expense.
I mean,
they sound really
white
cool
ladies,
when the world
they
ends
love
and you have
horses.
transportation and nobody else does. That sounds really cool to me, but it also sounds like a bit of a headache. Let's talk about my last essential, or again, like I said, I just have chickens and rabbits. I think if I was full on living off the land, I would say goats and pigs would be added to those two as essential. I think pigs are awesome. 150 to 200 pounds of pork. That's pretty awesome in 6 to 8 months. So that'd be like Berkshires or giving you that kind of thing. They turn for feed, you can pretty much, take your food scraps. But I know we don't have a lot of food scraps at my house, like that are going to sustain pigs, right?
Right.
Like I have food scraps I can give to pigs, but I'm not throwing out pounds of food every day. And pigs are
Maybe
looking
if you had
for
15 kids, that would be
right.
that would be different. I have a friend of mine that raises chickens for meat, and
Okay.
he got a pig, and they don't eat pork for religious reasons, and so I didn't understand the whole thing, and then I found
Yeah.
out like the pig would climb in bed with them, like it was just like a family pet that they
I
had, and then
I had
eventually it got so big they couldn't deal with that anymore, and now they
right.
just have a giant pig that they take care of for no reason.
Right. I had a customer that had pigs living in their house, and I thought
Hmm.
that was very odd. And I'm like, "You have a pig in the house?" And they were like, "Yeah, he hangs out like a dog." Like they're supposed to be smart. I
Yeah,
don't really
but
understand.
they're also kind of assholes. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
having a
you got
very aggressive dog that's large and eats nonstop, you know?
exactly. So that's it. People, again, you need area, you need to work on feed. They're kind of expensive to do. They're probably kinda gross to butcher. I don't know, I haven't really gotten into it. I haven't, butchered a pig. So,
Hmm.
I've done deer, I've done rabbits, I do chickens, I've done turkeys. I haven't done a pig, so I don't know. I hear it's not any worse, but it seems like it would be fatty and gross, and
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm a little intimidated by it. It's the next step.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and
the
it,
whole
just add
thing.
on that, go back to goats. That's one of the ones that a friend of mine that butchers. He says he won't butcher goats because
Really?
they're smart enough that you have to like be their friend and go up and be nice to them, and then just
Yeah.
slit their throat. So
Nice.
he said it always made him feel bad.
Oh, okay, but as far as doing it, it seems like a deer, and it seems like he'd be pretty reasonable.
Yeah, yeah.
I like, honestly, the bigger animals because, like, to me, the hardest part is gutting the animal, like, dealing with guts and getting that
Hmm.
whole tract out of there, and bigger animals, you get more like, you're still doing the unequal amount of work, right? Whether I'm
Right.
gutting a rabbit or gutting a deer, it's about equal in time and effort in
Right.
getting the guts out. And to me, that's the hardest part. I can do that, then I'm just cutting up meat's easy, and you
Hmm.
can get that smell and everything out of there. So to me, like something big like goats or deer, you're doing it quickly and getting right to it. Kind of excited about that. I think that'd be cool. Goats are pretty big on being resistant to pests and things like that, where they kind of excite me as far as an animal to do. The big thing is deworming with goats and pigs and that kind of stuff. So you got
Yeah,
to keep
yeah.
an
They
eye
can
on
have
that.
a lot of
I mean,
parasites.
that can be a thing. I see stuff on the internet with chickens and stuff about deworming and parasites and disease. I've never dealt with any of that, never really had an issue. So that's, you got to make your own judgment on that. Talk to your vet. I'm sure vets are happy to sell you anything you want to buy. But I know some of the bigger stuff, you're going to be dealing with illness if you're not dealing with, deworming and stuff like that. So something to keep in mind is what I would say.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about ostriches?
Yes,
Neither of
ostriches.
us have any
Nope.
experience with ostriches.
No experience, but they're unique, right? So you have lean meat. It's a red meat like beef, actually. They say one egg is equivalent to 24 chicken eggs.
Hmm.
People actually sell ostrich feathers and they sell ostrich leather. So you're getting meat, eggs, feathers, but a male ostrich can be 9.5 feet tall. That's intimidating, Kevin. And
Hmm.
their big necks, they just creep me out, right?
Yeah.
It's just but I saw somebody, I watched that, Homestead Rescue or something on Discovery, and they had, ostriches, and these things were, like, 2 days old. They had just hatched, and they were, like, full-size chicken, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Whoa."
Just
That's kinda neat.
out of the
It
gate.
just right away,
Giant.
you're going, and they're just ostrich feed is like 20 to 30 bucks for like a 50-pound bag. They say you actually want 1,000 square feet per bird and tall fencing like 6 to 8 feet. So that's but the meat sells for 15 to $20 a pound. And I read, now I imagine you got to live in like bougie New York City or something, but one egg sells for $20 to $50 each. I
I mean, I don't
who's paying that?
understand. It's two
2
dozen
dozen eggs.
eggs
I'm not paying
worth of
$20 for that.
one egg. Like,
right?
what are you like? Do you just have to cook it all at once? I don't understand the whole ostrich egg thing, but
Yeah, breeding is expensive, but high startup. They said it could be $500 to $2,000 a bird if you're buying like adult size. So
oof.
yeah, to get into it. But once you get in, are you the coolest guy in town?
Yeah, I
New
mean, if
ostrich
anybody
farm?
is that listens is raising ostriches,
We need something in the
email us
comments here.
about
We
this.
need
Yeah,
to
let
know.
us know.
Maybe you want to come to my farm. I'll set you up with some money, and you set me up with some ostriches. Like when I say set you up with money, like $500. Like I'm not
Not going
like
all in with
grand.
ostriches.
I'm not $8,000 into ostriches. I'm just like, bring me some babies and we'll go see what we can figure out. But that sounds pretty neat though. So
Mhm.
anyway, thoughts, concerns, maybe a big story about livestock that you had that's a little traumatizing. I've had my share of traumatizing and, like rabbits eating babies and things, and there's ugly things. Like I said, livestock tends to come with dead stock, so it can have issues, but I got to say it can be rewarding too. And
Mhm.
having meat that's actually fresh and healthy is worth a lot. Knowing how it was taken care of, knowing that it was actually given a humane life, that's pretty awesome. Knowing that, you know, eh, knowing that it wasn't abused and nasty and just like filled with grossness and growing in their own filth, kind of cool.
Mhm.
But that means you have to take care of it and not have it growing in its own filth and whatever. So
Right.
you got to kind of do your part to get the benefit, but that's how that works. But I don't know. Actually, speaking of parasites, Kevin, people can get parasites, and a
I've
lot of
heard that.
disease comes from parasites.
Mhm.
And we actually have a sponsor, Jase Medical, that I put in the show notes. They have a lot of cool tricks that sell certain products you might have heard people mention on the internet that we're not really allowed to mention on YouTube, that you could purchase from them. Jase Medical, you might want to check it out, see what some of the neat things. But if you wanted to get rid of
Yeah.
parasites,
They had some great
you might have some products.
antibiotics, some great stuff there. Yeah.
They also do kits. They work out the whole prescription thing and making it all legal and the way things should be. So that's something to check out. Another thing you guys might want to check out is survival and basic badass podcast.com, where you can buy badass gear like cool shirts and all kinds of stuff. We have like cool beer glasses and coffee mugs and all kinds of cool stuff on there. We also have an email list that I just sent out like the first email in like a year the other day. So, we're getting there and, we're learning. And, but basically, I'm just saying you might want to go sign up for the email list. If I find like super awesome deals, and I'll like send them out to you guys. And I seriously, legitimately, I'm only sending you a deal that I think like I'm like, oh, I should buy that. Like, I just found a deal on something really awesome the other day. I can't even mention it on YouTube because they freak out. And I was like, oh, and I'm like texting like 8 of my buddies, or I saw like a binary trigger deal. And I was like, hey, look at this deal. It's really amazing. And like 8 of my buddies, and I just texted them and I didn't get anything for that. But those are the kind of things that I'm like sharing with you. It's not like, hey, look at this shenanigans that, isn't worth anything. Like to me, like Jase Medical, right? The reason I'm telling you about it, it's almost impossible to find antibiotics and things that are going to last you through the apocalypse
Mhm.
the store. And this is a way that I found to do it. And so it's kind of cool. So I'm just saying there's options out there. Anyway, Kevin, any other thoughts, concerns?
Nope. That's all I got. If you got any ideas for a show, send us an email, preppingbadass@gmail.com. And that's all I got.
All right. So with that, stay safe and we will talk to you guys next week.